Wake up. It's the Sleep Unplugged podcast, episode 146, Cognitive Shuffling. Ain't nothing to it. Welcome, everyone, to the Sleep Unplugged podcast. My name is Chris Winter, your host. I'm a neurologist and sleep specialist, and I'm really happy you're here. If you're new to the Sleep Unplugged podcast, welcome. If you're a veteran, welcome back. We are glad you're here. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can reach us at Dr. Chris Winter on Instagram, Dr. Chris Winter X or Twitter, Dr. Chris Winter Bluesky Threads. We have a YouTube page where we post all the videos of our content. We also have a Spotify music playlist where we list all the songs that we talk about. We always put a song lyric in the title. In fact, one of my listeners reached out to me through Instagram and said, I'm having trouble finding the playlist. And so I sent her the link. So if you're having trouble finding the Spotify playlists and would like to have them, just DM me on Dr. Chris Winter on Instagram, and I will send you those links. And you can, at your next dinner party, you can play the music. And when somebody says, what interesting eclectic music you're playing, you can say, well, funny you should say that because it's from a podcast I listen to where he talks about a musical song every week that has nothing to do with sleep, but some little hidden reference in the title. And today is no different. It is the first Monday of the month. And so we are talking about insomnia, specifically cognitive shuffling. But if you're a longtime listener of the podcast, you know this is the first show after April Fool's Day. So we generally do comments, corrections, criticisms. If we don't have a sponsor, there is no sponsor for the podcast this week. So on April Fool's Day, we forego the comments, corrections, criticisms, and go to the top 10 comments as I see them over the last year. So we'll jump right into it. Number one, this was a comment based upon last week's episode that featured a Prince lyric. The lyric that I put in the podcast was "Jerk Your Body." And this listener said, the lyric is, then you jerk your body like a horny pony would. Why would you do this on your podcast? Appreciate the comment. I don't know what he means when he says, why would you do this on your podcast? Is he saying, why would you put a lyric that talks about a horny pony on your podcast? Or why would you actually jerk your body like a horny pony on the podcast? Which I assure you, I did not. But if there's demand for that, I could give it a shot. Thank you. It was a great comment. Next one. This was from Hannah. Hannah wrote this comment about my book, and she said, this book would have taken a lot less time if I saw, Hannah wrote, this book would have taken a lot less time if I saw the author's photo beforehand. OMG, what a dreamboat. Alas, his photo is at the end of the book like typical authors. Him being handsome aside, this author has such a good writing style, funny and packed with information. His little side notes made me literally laugh out loud and share it with whoever I was near. Highly recommend. So this was from on Goodreads. This was a comment from Hannah on Goodreads. And I thanked Hannah for that comment because it went right to my head. I appreciate that. That was a really good author picture. I think it was taken by the photographer, Jen Ferriello. There is a joke in my family that I don't take really great photographs, but God, she took a good one for that one. And I'm glad, Hannah, that you liked it. And I'm glad it was a little surprise ending for the book for you. Let's contrast that with number 3. This comment is horrible. Impossible to find the information I needed in this book. So between that commenter who did not leave his name and Hannah, widely different views on the same book. Nicole wrote about my book. This is book, The Sleep Solution, Why Your Sleep's Broken, How to Fix It. Repetitive and useless information. I pushed through this and cannot get my time back. Well, I'm sorry, Nicole, if there was some way that I could manipulate the time-space continuum in some sort of Marvel cinematic universe way, I would love to give you both your money and your time back. I'm sorry that you didn't find what you needed in the book. Number 5, F-Bomb, and he spells bomb, B-O-M, wrote, pillow fight, more like pillow fight. I have no idea what that comment means, but it really made me laugh. Number 6, Greg wrote, Is there an advantage to living naked? This was about the podcast episode. He came to it a little bit more recently. The episode we wrote about sleeping naked. He wrote, Greg, is there advantage to living naked? And are naked people intrinsically more truthful people, as in the naked truth? Great question, Greg. I do not have the answer for that, as I do not live naked, nor anybody know anybody who does. Number seven, Taylor wrote, I've never hated a book so much in my life. I truly cannot explain what a monumental waste of time it was to finish. 35 pages could have been cut out of dumb, annoying jokes, and I can basically summarize the book in a few sentences. You do sleep. No shit, Sherlock. I'm thinking that's Sherlock. It's spelled very creatively. Who on earth is saying they never sleep? A lot of people, actually, Taylor. But anyway, we all sleep, but some of us only get 3 to 6 hours, and that's not okay. Then, quote, stop stressing about it so much. Oh, wow, what excellent advice. And you actually function better than you think you do without sleep. And then it just ends right there. So thank you, Taylor, for taking that time. Sorry that it, again, wasn't your cup of tea. Number eight, a reader wrote or a listener wrote, what's your favorite pill? So, and it was totally out of context with any podcast. I'm not sure exactly what he's talking about. Um, yeah, I don't know that I have a favorite pill. Number nine, your wife deals. Sorry, I butchered that. It's too bad. This listener wrote, your wife deals with a lot with you. Yes? Question mark. And number 10, I like your BPE. And then in parentheses, it wrote big pillow energy. And then there was a wink emoji. And then there was the house emoji, which I don't really understand. But hey, this was around the pillow fight episode we did. And I'm going to throw in a bonus because I had to put this one in there. This listener wrote, I wish I could see more of you. It might help. Well, I'm sorry that you're only getting me from the shoulders up on the YouTube video. I don't think seeing any more would be particularly helpful to your sleep. My legs are painfully white. So anyway, that's our April Fool's tradition. Top 10 comments. Maybe yours will be on there next week. I appreciate everybody, both the positive and the negative, and especially the weird and difficult to decipher. We value your voice and want to make it heard on the podcast. Really quickly, the musical reference for this week's episode is a little obscure. It's Boz Scaggs, who was one of those artists growing up that I was aware of. And when I listened to their music, it would have been something that I would have not have been into as a younger person. But as I've gotten older, I do like Boz Scaggs. And Ain't Nothing to It was the best I could do because I really wanted to do the song Lido Shuffle since we're talking about cognitive shuffling. So Ain't Nothing to It is from the song Lido Shuffle, which was a big hit for Boz Scaggs. He wrote it with David Paich. It was on his seventh album, Silk Degrees. And what I like about this album and Boz Scaggs is that Boz Scaggs is kind of credited by bringing together the band Toto. In fact, members of Toto basically said we would not exist were it not for this album, Silk Degrees, because Boz Scaggs basically handpicked his musicians for the album. And David Paich was one of them. I can't remember the bass player, Hungate, I believe. Hungate. I can't remember his first name. And then Jeff Porcaro, who I think is one of the best drummers ever, was the drummer for Lido Shuffle and was the drummer for Toto. And if you've ever listened to the song Roseanne and know anything about drumming, it is a complicated, bizarre beat that he plays on that. And we'll have to put a Toto song on there soon. So we will add Lido Shuffle to the Spotify music playlist. And if you're having any trouble finding the playlist, just let me know. So cognitive shuffling, I came about this article. It was sent to me. There was a New York Times article written by, where did my reference go here? Oh, I must have deleted it. Oh, no, here it is. It's Christina Caron. She wrote it, Caron. It was a March 20th, 2025 article that she wrote for the New York Times. And it's I think it's part of a recurring series that she does called Psych 101. And I get sent articles about things related to sleep, and I really thought this was an interesting article for a lot of reasons, and I'll go through it. Um, so, cognitive shuffling is a technique that was developed to help people take their mind off the goal of falling asleep and fall asleep a little bit faster. And so the way cognitive shuffling works is that you think of a word. And in this article, the word they talked about was Pluto, like the planet. Now, once you've got Pluto in your mind, think about Pluto for a minute, maybe picture the little planet that is not a planet anymore. And then you need to think of another word that starts with P. Maybe plate, maybe plum, maybe porch. Every time you think of that P word, imagine it, take a beat, and then think of another one. And when you're done, then it's time to move on to a different letter. And you do this throughout the night until you fall asleep. And so we've talked about insomnia and people talking about, I just can't shut my mind off at night. So this is sort of a sidestep. It's a shuffle, right? You're not trying to shut your mind off. You're just trying to make what you're thinking about maybe less intense, a little bit more random and less stressful. And it was interesting that the whole thing kind of was popularized by a doctor, Joe Whittington, who's a 47-year-old ER doctor who's got 750,000 followers on some platform. So like 100 times more, 75 times more than what we've going on here at this my social media and this podcast. And it would sort of took social media by storm, as most things do when it comes to a simple tip or trick to fix insomnia. In fact, let me read the title of the New York Times article: A Simple Technique to Help You Fall Asleep. Cognitive shuffling can calm a busy brain. That's the sort of the subtitle. Tips and tricks. Here we are, Insomnia Monday, and we are talking about tips and tricks, as what we typically do when we're talking in the media about insomnia. It's a tip or trick. How can I fall asleep faster? What's a simple way I can shut my mind off at night? What are some things I can do here? And it's interesting to me because I thought, well, okay, this is great. There's nothing going on here. And you read on about this article, and it was actually developed by a professor in Canada, Luc Bedoin, who's a cognitive scientist and adjunct professor at Simon Fraser University. And it goes on, and the interviewer says, how did he come up with this idea? Well, he created this idea of cognitive shuffling more than 15 years ago, in part because he was struggling with insomnia as well, too. And so in 2016, he studied this method and studied it in relationship to another common insomnia practice, which is write down your worries, journaling before you go to bed. Very common thing that we talk about with people and have insomnia. If you have things on your mind, have a piece of paper and pencil next to your bed and write them down. So in 2016, he did a study where he compared people who were journaling, and he had a different name for it, versus his cognitive shuffling. The title of the article was Serial Diverse Imaging Task. God damn, that's a complicated, that is a really academic word for what we're talking about here. A new remedy for bedtime complaints of worrying and other sleep disruptive mental behavior. And in the study basically said it worked. There's that W word again. It worked. Compared to writing things down, it worked. And so the first thing that I thought about was, are we just counting sheep here? Isn't this just like a fancy? I mean, I remember when I was a kid, what I would sometimes do, it was a little exercise I would just kind of stumbled upon myself, which was I would think of like a Coke can. And a Coke can is red. It's got this white wave on it. And so then I would take a detail from the Coke can, like the white wave, and now that would lead me to the thought of an actual wave. And then that would lead me to the thought of a surfer on that wave. And when I think about the surfer, he's wearing shorts that have flowers on them. And then I would think about like a botanical garden, a really nice one that you would visit, like Selby Gardens in Sarasota, Florida, this beautiful, so, and then you're at the botanical garden and you see a Venus flytrap. And then when I think about Venus Flytrap, I think about the musical Little Shop of Horrors. And when I think about Little Shop of Horrors, I think about Rick Moranis. And when I think about Rick Moranis, I definitely think about Spaceballs. So, and when I think about Spaceballs, I think about Lord Helmet. And I'll stop there. So you get what I'm saying. It's if you give a mouse a cookie. Okay. So we've just come up with on the Sleep Unplugged podcast a new treatment for insomnia, and it's really exciting. It's the if you give a mouse a cookie method, right? And I just explained it to you. So what was so anyway, listen, great. You've come up with a counting sheep. And just to be clear, counting sheep's been going on, I think, since the beginning of recorded time, that shepherds would literally go out and they would go out and count sheep because they were nervous that they were missing sheep. So counting them right before they went to bed was a way to kind of relax. And then, of course, that becomes um, dogma for falling asleep. Instead of worrying about something like you're an emergency room doctor and all that. I'm telling you something. I've been watching, a little side note. I've been watching the show The Pit on Max, and I'm often reluctant to watch medical shows. I did watch ER when it was on, and maybe the first couple seasons of Grey's Anatomy a long time ago. I don't think there's ever been a truly amazing medical show that really captures what's really going on in a hospital like St. Elsewhere. So every time I watch a show, I'm like, nobody does that. We don't do that. No, 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 no. Like St. Elsewhere kind of captured it. That was modeled off the book House of God by Samuel Shem. I had actually my second book, The Rested Child, had a little reference to Sam Shem at the end because he has the House of God, the rules of the House of God. I had the rules of the House of Nod. So ripping them off, but doing it in a way paying homage to one of my favorite books ever written. But The Pit's pretty good. I've been watching that. It does a good job. I mean, I will admit there's a lot of people who are really praising it that I find it to be really interesting. I have a big problem with it though. I'm a neurologist. I did my neurology residency at the University of Virginia and spent a lot of time with the neurology residents down at Emory University. So the pit basically starts at, I think, 6 a.m. and every episode's an hour. So it's literally a day. So I'm like at hour 10. I don't know how many episodes are in the pit. I think I've watched 10 episodes. There has not been a single neurology consult done in this hospital, which is supposed to be somewhere in Pittsburgh. And if you're listening, creators of The Pit, you lost me there because let me tell you something. Neurology residents live in the ER. We're constantly evaluating people. Sometimes I don't even know why I'm down there evaluating a person. I remember as a resident, it was like, we've got a person down here who's got Parkinson's disease. Can you do a consult on them? I'm like, is their Parkinson's disease a problem? Is it something that there's a clinical question here? Anyway, so watch The Pit. But as I watch The Pit, my point being, people are suffering, dying, and the people who are taking care of it, they really do a good job capturing the it's not nonchalance. I'm not finding the right word here. It's, I don't have the time nor the mental capacity to really engage with this because now I'm moving on to something else. In fact, there's a great scene with the main doctor attending, played by Nola Wiley, who a tragedy happens. He's with his team. He's telling them a story. And as the watcher of the show, you're really invested in it. And then all of a sudden, people get called to do something else, and you never get the end of the story. I mean, that is the ER right there. So I can imagine when you watch The Pit, thinking when you go home and go to bed that night, there's a lot of stuff that you don't want to think about. And so to that end, I think cognitive shuffling is awesome. Like it's great. But do I think it's particularly different than counting sheep or my WNBA player who imagines herself shooting free throws every night, or my patients who bake banana bread, or my other patient who plays golf in his mind, or my other patient who likes to try to name state capitals or do mental math or name as many professional sports teams as he can? No, it's all sort of distracting from when I go to bed if I don't distract myself, I can't fall asleep. So, in this way, is there a big difference between cognitive shuffling and counting sheep or watching episodes of Friends? Or, like a patient just told me, I've got this Marvel movie I like to watch. I've watched it a million times. I don't really pay attention to it. I know it so well. It just kind of takes my mind off. It's that take my mind off. Take my mind off of the act of sleeping, which to me, we're running away from the problem. What are we trying to do here on the Sleep Unplugged podcast? We're trying to run towards the problem. It's upsetting. Taylor in the comment that I read earlier said, we all sleep, but some of us only get 3 to 6 hours, and that's not okay. Stop stressing about it so much. Oh, wow. What excellent advice. You probably function better than you think without sleep. It's actually probably function better than you think when insomnia is happening. People who are not sleeping don't function particularly well. But you do you see that? Stop stressing about it so much. She's saying, "Oh no, no joke. Stop stressing about it so much." Well, I am stressed about it. And you telling me not to stress about it is not helping any. And I get that. But I also think that sidestepping the problem and trying to distract from it is to some degree missing the point. And I get it. All the cognitive people come out, Chris, you bash this stuff sometimes. I do, because I think that the goal of cognitive behavioral therapy is you are walking along and you've encountered a tree. Yes, we can do things to act like the tree is not there, I guess. We could physically try to move the tree, or we could just move our way around it. We could recognize the tree is here, it's blocking our path, but I'm just going to, it's okay. I'm going just to move around this tree. I'm not going to try to move this object that to some degree is immovable. I'm just going to kind of move around. It's a different state of mind is really what I think of as meaningful insomnia therapy. And maybe listing names that begin with a letter is a way to get around that. Maybe on the other end of cognitive shuffling, you realize, hey, if I think of other letters, words that start with other letters, I can sleep. And I hope that the next thought becomes, so if all it takes is me thinking about different letters, it looks like my state of mind really might be what's going on here, right? That maybe I can sleep even if I don't think of letters or words to start with the letter P. Like that's to me the goal is that zenith, that sort of epiphany, the top of the mountain where you realize I was doing it all along. That this method, yeah, distracted me from a few things, shut the noise down, but maybe I can go beyond that. You know, it's like in Dune, the David Lynch method, the David Lynch treatment. I always liked that Paul had this weirding module. They didn't do it in the newer version of Dune, but in the David Lynch version, they had the weirding module that allowed him to, kind of shoot, an energy blast. And later on, Paul, the Kwisatz Haderach, eventually was able to do that without the weirding module. And I remember one of the Fremen, the one that played by Antonio or Javier Bardem, that character in David Lynch's, I'm blanking on his name. I can't believe I can't remember. He turns to another Fremen and says, Usul no longer needs the weirding module. So to me, I think in a weird way, the cognitive shuffling is the weirding module, right? You're using it to get yourself to sleep. But hopefully over time, you no longer need it because it's building a confidence in you, whether it's state capitals, banana bread, playing golf, counting backwards from 1,000, counting sheep, whatever. The last thing I've got to mention, which just cracked me up, was the article goes on, and this is another problem we have in sleep, was that basically the author wrote, should you try it? Should you try cognitive shuffling? And I'm reading this from the article, possibly. There's not enough evidence to support using cognitive shuffling as a primary treatment for insomnia, says a doctor from the University of Pennsylvania. Um, and I guess that's true. Sure. Okay. We need to study, this is a quote, we need to study this more to be able to fully say, yes, this should be a consistent tool like CBTI is, says this doctor. Um, and then Shelby Harris, who's really smart about sleep and insomnia, she wrote, "When it works, wow, it can really help some people," said this psychologist. So she kind of came back and said, "Hey, when it helps, it can really help people. Like I'm sure counting sheep can, or making banana bread, whatever it is." It's interesting to me that anybody would say anything other than what Shelby said. Like, sure, try it. Okay, let's not get dependent upon it. Like you're going to sleep whether you name words or not. But if it helps you get images from the ER out of your head, then so be it. That's great. What do you mean, possibly? This is not some sort of experimental treatment for an aggressive sarcoma that's growing in your leg. Should we try this new treatment that's only been tested on mice? Whoa, 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 possibly. We don't get too ahead of ourselves. We haven't fully evaluated this clinically to figure out if it's working or not. And this is a problem I have with a lot of what our governing bodies say within sleep. We're treating it like cancer, aren't we? We're treating insomnia like cancer. Whoa, slow your roll here, partner. Can't just be naming words here. We haven't clinically studied this yet. Okay. What is the worst thing that's going to happen here? It's not going to work. That's the worst thing that's going to happen. Or it'll work for 2 weeks, as a lot of treatments do, then it stops working. The crisis, right? Well, I was doing this thing and it was working great, and then it didn't. And now the insomnia comes roaring back because the solution is not working. I've had patients say that kind of stuff all the time, you know. I've never had anybody mention cognitive shuffling specifically, but I was doing this thing and it was working, Chris. It was working great. And then 3 weeks ago, it stopped working. Working, working. So when we think about insomnia treatments, we've got to get past, no offense to this lovely writer in this very interesting article, no offense to Christina, the simple trick. We've got to get past it because the simple trick without the reimagining of your relationship with sleep is probably destined to fail eventually. What we need to do is take the simple trick and use that as a springboard for a discussion. Hey, what do you think happened when you were struggling for years and years and years without sleeping? And then you started naming letters that started with P and you started sleeping again. What do you think happened? Do you think it's because you're thinking of letters that start with P? Or do you think something more profound is happening or starting to happen? And that's the dialogue we need to be having with people. This is a great start. This is a great technique, but sleep is much more fundamental than this and much more reliable. And getting back to that word work, does cognitive shuffling work? Sure, because sleep works. And if you're somebody who's struggling with insomnia right now and you've tried the cognitive shuffling and it worked or it didn't work, just understand that sleep is working for you all the time. Can we make it better? Can we refine it? Can we make it more predictable? Can we make it more to our liking? Of course. But we want to start with the premise of sleep is there for us. It's impossible not to sleep. And we want to use any technique we choose to build a confidence, to build an understanding, and build a relationship with sleep. that isn't propped up with a technique that on Tuesday night might not work for you. And then when it doesn't work, where do our minds go? Where does the interpretation go? So that's it. Wanted to talk about cognitive shuffling. And I'm going to go against the APSS and say, yes, you should try it. It is perfectly fine to try it. Who cares about the clinical studies? I defy the APSS and say, I don't care that there's not clinical evidence that says this is okay to try an insomnia. You can do it. You have my seal of approval. It's okay to give it a try. But don't stop at cognitive shuffling. Take your relationship with sleep further. Take your understanding with sleep further. Let it be a springboard, not an end goal. That's it. Cognitive shuffling done and dusted. Follow me, Dr. Chris Winter. Follow the on Instagram, Twitter. Follow the podcast, Sleep Unplugged. We love any reviews of the podcast. We really, really appreciate them. And until next week, sleep well.